Hello everyone, welcome back to the YouTube channel. Welcome back to this video where I'm going to be sharing with you the reason why I quit alcohol. I'm going to take you back to that very day when I realised that I couldn't continue anymore. I really did hit rock bottom. Now, of course, you don't have to get to that place to quit. You can not even start. But I think by sharing my experience, it might inspire other people to realise perhaps it's not the life for them, that alcohol-free living might be the way forward. My name's Dr. Alex George. I'm nearly 3 years alcohol-free and quitting the booze has changed my life. And this YouTube channel is all about sharing the highs and the positives, as well as the challenges of living alcohol-free and hopefully creating a community that makes everyone feel empowered by this choice and able to make a decision that's right for them. If you haven't already, do subscribe to the YouTube channel. We deliver videos every single Sunday to support you on this journey. Do like as well if you like the video, because it helps reach people that might be helped by this content. For regular subscribers, you probably have realized I'm not in the same place I usually shoot my videos. I usually have my green sofa in my flat, and you can see the shot behind me. I'm clearly in a different place. So I live between just outside of Southampton now and London. I kind of split my weeks between the two places. So this is the flat that I'm in down here. So very lucky. It's a lovely light flat. It's a beautiful spot to be in. And so some of my videos will be made, well, from here. So as a background, I'm someone who grew up in West Wales in a community that is very much about rugby, socialising, from a very early age, being given, a beer where there's a small glass and eventually a can of your own, till eventually you're going out and drinking with your mates. It's kind of something that was almost a rite of passage growing up in this country, right? It's kind of, you become a teenager, you get introduced to that world, you probably see your parents drinking, and then when you're 18, it's like, right, this is what you need to do now to socialise. If you've got a good day or a bad day, booze is always the answer. And for me, that was, well, I look back now and I realise that probably it did cause me problems even back then, but I didn't realise how much of an issue it was until only a couple of years ago. See, I think we're kind of told this message in this country that you need to basically manage this addictive, toxic substance. And if you're not able to, you're the problem, rather than this chemical that affects your brain and affects every organ in your body. If you're not able to handle that and to be able to continue through life and it not allow it to affect anything else and pretend that it kind of doesn't do anything negative, if you're not able to do those things, you're the problem. But, it's really interesting to me that in a way I kind of did the traditional, managing of alcohol for many years. And I used it socially, at university, let's be honest, a lot of that is about drinking culture. Med school was very heavily about drinking culture. And then when I went on to work as a doctor, that world is a lot about drinking as well. I think it might surprise people that, perhaps it doesn't surprise people, that medicine and in the medical world, the way that people deal with stress, a lot of it is through drinking, alcohol, using alcohol to manage stress levels. And it's something that I think is changing a little bit. I think there is there is quite a lot of people now within the health space and with the medical field that are saying, actually, I don't want to live like that. But to be honest, for a long time, it has been the primary way that people unwind, de-stress and socialise. So I turn up at King's College Hospital in London and I start working there, and of course booze becomes a big part of our social scene. The whole week of introduction is at the pub quizzes, then the socials, the mess socials as we call it. It's all about booze, all the money that you pay into the mess social. So the doctor's mess is effectively like the community hub, I guess, of the hospital. You pay into it and they pay towards things like some of the lunches sometimes, or if there's an event on, some of the money goes towards that. But largely they put on social events and most of the money goes as a bar tab. So yeah, it's one of those things where it was a big part of being a doctor. Fast forward as the years go by and, I've become someone in the public space, and all of a sudden you go into events and things. Booze is a part of events. Booze is a part of literally everything. And so I've kind of been just getting on with it, to be honest, throughout my 20s. I've been like, look, this is something that's giving me hangovers. I get quite anxious with it, but I need to be able to do this. Otherwise, I've got a problem. And anyway, so got to the point where we had the whole pandemic. Working through the pandemic, obviously, was crazy. A lot of stuff happened in my personal life. And then basically I was using work and alcohol to bury and suppress feeling. And I think there becomes a big difference between having a drink to socialise or just to relax on an occasion or as a treat, to using alcohol to kind of suppress. Now, I didn't feel a sense of chemical addiction to it, but it must have become habitual in terms of the sense I was using it for a purpose that was managing the way that I felt. What I didn't realise at that time until many years later is that I was actually self-medicating for ADHD as well. And I think throughout my teenage and 20s, I realised now that I was using alcohol to self-medicate, but not even realising. I was actually using two substances. I was using caffeine. So it's quite common for people with ADHD to use a lot of caffeine because caffeine stimulates dopamine production, and in ADHD it's a dopamine deficit disorder. So building levels of dopamine give you a sense of calm. So when I drink coffee, I feel calm, not elevated. So I was using caffeine 7 or 8 cups a day. That's a lot, I know, especially in the hospital. I was drinking loads, and then alcohol. And so I guess what changed in the last few years before I quit drinking was that I wasn't drinking anymore just to socialise or to self-medicate as I kind of was before. I was also doing it to suppress my feelings. And this effect on my life was huge. And, you know, I got to the point where I was over 20 stone in weight. I didn't exercise, eating terribly. I was hungover or anxious or drinking and just in a terrible state, to be honest. And I remember it was the 4th of December, I think was the date, 3 years ago, that I basically sat down in the chair of my barbers. So I sat down and, you know how they kind of go like, look, what do you want to have today? Like what the vibe we're going for? And I looked in the mirror and I looked in my eyes and I just realised I was completely lost. And it was a really, it was a sobering moment, excuse the pun, because I kind of looked in my eyes and was like, I don't know who Alex is anymore, which is a really frightening feeling, a strange feeling. It's like, I don't know who you are. I don't know who this person is that's looking back at me in the mirror. And so I realised that I had to change something. And my brother passed away a couple of years before that. Me and my family promised that all of us would stay and that no matter what happened, we'd get through it. So I thought basically, if I'm going to stay, then I don't want to stay like this. I want to feel better. And so I made a decision and I did two things. First of all, I said, I'm stopping the booze. I don't know how long for. I certainly at that point didn't think I was quitting alcohol. I thought it was going to be a break. I thought I'll quit the booze for now. I'll have a break from it and I'll start walking every day. And I know that sounds like a random pairing, but I grew up in West Wales. My family didn't have necessarily a lot at all, but we lived in a part of the world where you had fields around you. And so I grew up in the countryside. And I think my self-medicating for ADHD at that time was nature. Nature and being outdoors and running around, climbing trees was how I managed ADHD, you know, just roaming around outside basically. And, you know, for many years when I moved to the cities, I'd kind of gone for walks in the daytime, I guess to replicate some of that. But throughout that drinking period when I was really struggling, I just stopped going outside, stopped walking, stopped moving. And so I decided, well, let's stop drinking and let's just go out for a walk every morning. I had Rolo was newly with me and I thought, he's just cuddled up here, newly with me, and I thought, right, he needs to be walked, he needs to be outdoors. It's a better life for him to have really good walks in the morning. Let's get outside. And we do like a 45-minute walk every single morning. And it was interesting because at that time I realised that there was so much that needed to happen and change. There's so much that I needed to address in my own life. But I also realised I couldn't do it all at once. I think often people have a moment where they might hit rock bottom or they come to January and decide they want a big life change and they try and change everything at once. And I think when you try and do everything, you don't achieve anything. And I think that's because as human beings, we can only give our attention to one or two things at any one time. And that's why now, like when I wrote a new children's book, Happy Habits, it's all about like focusing on one thing. Once that becomes a habit, then stack it to the next thing. Don't try and change everything. And I think that's really, really important. And I'm so glad that back then I had enough insight to realise that I needed to do that. So I was like, stop drinking. Before I do anything, I need to stop putting this substance in my body because it's just not helping. And I need to go for a walk every day. And it's phenomenal, really, that the knock-on effect that had. So if I hadn't sat down that day on that chair and I hadn't looked at my eyes, I hadn't really had that moment of like clarity, God knows where I'd have ended up. And of course, you don't need to be at rock bottom to quit alcohol. You absolutely don't need to do that. A lot of people now are making a choice to not drink at all. They just don't even start drinking, or they start very mindfully and they have a few drinks here and there, but they don't really drink fully, if you know what I mean, like get into kind of booze culture and drinking heavily. So for me, that time obviously was rock bottom. For a lot of people, it just doesn't need to be. But you know, I realised, I guess, at that moment that I was at rock bottom. But in some ways, I think I wasn't ready to admit that fully to myself, because I was like, no, I'm making a health choice. Like, I want to be a bit healthy, I want to be a bit better. It's only when I look back now and I look at that time and think, I was really in a bad place. You know, my mental health was terrible. Physical health was awful. You know, a doctor said to me that if I continue that lifestyle the way that I'm living, you know, I might not even make 40. So it was a sobering time, again, excuse the pun, and a realisation that I had to make a big change, but it had to happen in a way that was achievable and sustainable. So I stopped drinking. I was lucky that I didn't have any like too bad of cravings or anything. I walked every day, and from the walking, that led to me thinking, well, actually, I used to like lifting weights. Let's go to the gym. I started lifting weights, and then a few weeks later passed, and I was like, actually, a couple of months later, I was like, I might start like trying to work towards running, but I was too heavy that time to go and run outside. I was worried about my joints, so on the treadmill, I do like incline walking, and then the more I lost weight, the more able I was to move, and then all of a sudden then I was able to kind of go and have a run and get outside, and it was a really interesting snowball effect that happened. It's like there's a turning point that day on the 4th of December, and there's a turning point that happened, and then from then on there was a snowball effect of you know, the more I did of this, the better I felt, the more I did of that. So, you know, the more I exercised, the more positive I felt, the more better food choice I made, the better mindset I had, the better thoughts I'd choose. And it just was a huge knock-on effect. It was a huge change. And it's really weird, as I say, you know, I'm recording this now at the end of October, it's October, November, and basically a month away from the 3 years of quitting booze. And it's really interesting to look back now and see how much has changed. You know, my life has entirely changed. The way that I live has changed. The way that I socialise. And I don't really think about booze now. You know, other than when I make this content, I sit down each week to record a video for you guys. I don't sit and think about alcohol at all. It doesn't take any space in my mind. And I think what happens is at the start, it's quite all-encompassing, and it's all you can think about, and it's like, how am I adapting, how am I changing, how am I quitting? But as the weeks and months go by, you just think about it less and less, and you just actually mould into this new way of living until you get to the point where your life is unrecognisable, but also you just don't even think about the previous way. So look, I just wanted to kind of share a bit of that experience. I know I've kind of touched upon it before in other videos, but I really wanted to kind of go back to that day and imagine that moment, you know, sitting in that chair. I can picture it so well, sitting down in the chair, had the black kind of robe thing on you, where looking in the mirror. I took a photo actually at the time, and I just remember looking and I was smiling at the photo, and I was like, what am I smiling for? I'm not happy. And I remember walking out of the hairdressers once I had my hair cut, and I was like, no more, I'm done. And I'd really be interested to hear actually from you guys, like, have any of you had that moment where you were like, this is enough, I don't want this anymore? Or has it been for you like a general imbalance in life? You're like, oh, net positive, net negative. I'd be fascinated to know. And I think probably what's going to change is that more people will recognise and decide not too soon. And I think traditionally people who have quit alcohol have got to rock bottom and quit booze. You hear a lot of it in celebrity culture, but also just in life. People kind of hit the difficult point in life and then they quit. But I think so many people more now are opting earlier and realising, actually, I don't think this is a positive in my life, I want to live differently, and they're quitting. So whatever situation you're in now, and whatever preference that you have, you know, whether you want to drink or not, I would just say, really think about, does it actually add to my life? Does it add more than it takes away? If it takes away more than it adds, then you've got a decision to kind of make. But anyway, I thought I'd share a little snippet of that day. Let me know, please, in the comments below what videos you'd like me to make now. We're running into the Christmas time. Would you like content around how to manage Christmas alcohol-free, quitting over Christmas? Do you want a kind of 3 years alcohol-free video when that date comes up? What kind of content do you want? Because what's important to me is that I make videos that help you. These videos are for you, and therefore I want to make sure they're as useful as possible. So please do write in the comments. I read the comments. it's really useful to share any thoughts that you have. And also, yeah, welcome to this flat as well. You'll be seeing videos from there and also in London. Suze, who shoots my content, isn't with me today. It's kind of self-shot on my iPhone with some clever mic stuff connecting me up. So hopefully the sound and everything has worked okay. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for joining me. Comment down below. Please do like the video if you've enjoyed it. It really helps us with reaching more people. Okay, take care and goodbye.